going live and all right, we're live. And video's back. Cool. All right. Then let's get my bearings, find this window. Okay, cool. All right, we can get started. All right, hello everyone. Sorry for the late start. Welcome to the April 21st Octant community meeting. This one's a pretty exciting one. We've got a few things on the agenda. Does anyone have anything else to add before we get started today? I can share my screen and we will start moving along here. Here, there. All right. Well, if anyone has anything, you can always edit this in real time. You just go on to the middle portion here and you can add them to Q&A or bring it up through Slack or any of the other mediums. But we'll go ahead and get started. So first item on the agenda. This one has been an issue that has gotten some attention from a few people. Vikram and I did have a chat about it yesterday. So back when we bumped our client Go dependencies to 119.3, I believe, it sets off a lot of deprecation warnings for a lot of the Kubernetes resources, which are now deprecated. And we decided to, one, just say they're not officially supported, or we implemented a version skew policy, but also it was done with the understanding that the API server does the conversions. And apparently this is not the case for certain versions of Kubernetes. So in this issue, we have captured some of the discussion here and what's happening, and some people are on EKS clusters. And really it's not, I think we had a run around here because we're just working off different Kubernetes versions. But people on 1.8 and below, if I understand correctly, will not get the upcasted Ingress version, and so it returns nothing. Whereas if they were on a newer version of Kubernetes, even if you request networking v1 beta and you've applied something as like a v1 beta 1 Ingress, it would still return something. So Vikram did the detective work on this, so thank you, Vikram. And we had a discussion about it and left a message. And essentially, the thought process is this. Yes, it's a problem. I think it does break a few users. But at the end of the day, we don't know how important this is, right? Like this might not even be like a valid discussion point in like 3 months from now, right? And the other angle to take this with is like we're on cloud native infrastructure, right? So it's like it's kind of hard to imagine someone would be pinned to a deprecated version of an Ingress. And the idea is like if we're using modern infrastructure, like we should be thinking about upgrades and being able to update our things in, you know, a relatively short amount of time. So I think we'll leave this issue open for now. I think that's the consensus we've made. And if there is overwhelming community pressure saying, no, we really need to support Ingresses on less than, or I guess like 1.8 and below, then we're happy to add a separate key in here, and this is fixable. But if not, you know, I think either way, with our current version skew policy, the next time we update client Go, this issue becomes invalid anyways. So it's, you know, so we're still chasing like maybe another 2-3 months of, at most, where this issue is valid. So does anyone have any questions about this one?
No, actually, I don't. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we could totally have discussions about, well, how often do we bump client Go? And I don't think we've ever explicitly mentioned a policy towards that.
Oh, we do. We have one.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we put it in the docs last time this came up. Well, not about client Go, but like what versions of Kubernetes we support, which in turn is like, how often do we rev client Go, essentially? That like the one has a direct, like our support policy has a direct impact on what versions of client Go we would rev to. So
Right. Well, we don't have timelines, right? Like, for example, like we don't really say like, I think what is the latest version, like Tot 2.1 or something?
Yeah, 2.1's RC, I think, right? So
2.1's RC. Yeah. So, okay. So we've got time. Like when they cut, like, I don't know, we'll like pin right away, but yes, we do have a version skew policy. So, keep that in mind, as Octant keeps scaling up, to new versions.
Yeah, so I think technically right now 1.18 is the lower end of our policy. So anything less than 1.18 would technically not be supported under that policy, which is why this issue has come up. And yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, all right. Well, if anyone has such strong feelings about this, please comment on the issue. Let somebody know. I think adding a separate key isn't too difficult. It's just more, it's churn. It's not difficult. Cool. Moving on. This one is a demo. I have some thoughts. This is kind of more theoretical stuff. It's not even a fully working demo. Do we maybe want to jump to resource sphere improvements? This one's by Milan, presumably.
Sure, yeah, I can do that.
Sure, I'll stop sharing for a second and I'll let you present.
Yeah, let me share. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's just a quick video recording that I did while I was testing. Let me just give some background. One of the oldest and the hardest issues with resource viewer that we had for a long time is sometimes when you get a view like this, it would just start updating and refreshing and changing the layout and doing things like that. And we worked on that for a long time. Sam kicked this off a few months ago, I think, and he made some really good observations how pods and services are basically competing for CPU time as we start those threads. So that really helped. And then also Luis took a stab on this and made some additional observations that helped. But then I kind of started with that and spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out what's going on, and eventually ended up making a solution that is currently under review. There's a PR number in meeting notes. I don't have it right now, but I'll try to find it a little later. But basically, let me start this video. Here on the left side, we have the old resource viewer. On the right side is the new one. And you can see right over the way that layout's changed quite a bit. And basically, the way we structure the layout now is the component you're looking right now, in this case, is deployment. It's always going to be at the top, and then we'll see the children and so on, which is an additional benefit of this change. And let me start this video. On the left side, we have the old one, and they're running side by side on the same view. And keep an eye on this service here. So there's the first update, second update. And along the way, you can see that services 2 and Web 2 and Web keep swapping places a few times. And at the same time, you see on the right, that's pretty much rock solid. So I recorded this for 38 seconds. I think there were 12 updates in the old version and none in the new one. So I just wanted to, kind of give you the preview of this. This is currently under review, so hopefully it's going to hit the master pretty soon and be part of the next release. So
this is so great. Like, I just want to say that this is so, like, one of the biggest frustrations I've had using Resource Viewer in the past is, like, you're looking at something and then you're like, oh, okay, yeah. And then you have it selected, or you're zoomed in to a section because you're looking at a large set of connected things. And then toggles and refreshes and like zooms you out, recenters, and like the thing you were looking at isn't even in the same place it used to be. It's like
And
somewhere else
selection
now.
changes too, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. This is so great. Yeah. This is like definitely a team effort that Milan like carried the torch the last bit of the way here. And it's like, I'm so happy to just see this solved. And yeah, thanks everyone who had a hand in working on this. This is a really old issue too. It's like probably over a year old.
Right. Yeah. I think this also gives a lot of ways we can build on top of it. The resources are grouped as well based on their kind. So for complex layouts, that opens another feature that hopefully is coming soon, which is expanding and collapsing. Like if you have 16 services here, do you really need to show them all? Maybe you can just, show one box and things like that. So,
well, yeah, and like in the old one, where would you even put the collapse? Right, like this, like it's like the way it renders. It all depends. It's just like, yeah, this is great. And another, I don't know if I might have missed it if you didn't call it out, but one thing to notice on this new version is that normally, if you notice the pod on the left-hand side is the root node, the deployment now is always the root. And if you like go to the pod view, the pod it properly reflects what resource you're looking at. When before it would always, ultimately it would always boil down to like whatever the last thing it associated with it was or the, not the last thing, but the thing that was common would end up being the root. And in this case, it was pods. So now we see deployment replica set, then pod, which is what you want to see when you're looking at a deployment.
Right. So it's a little bit, it's still somewhat confusing if you start with a pod because, under the pod, we show secrets, services, and ingresses, but then also the deployments and replica sets. Those tend to kind of group on the left side, but still that's the proper way to show it if that pod is the center of your view.
Yep.
So, yeah. The one other thing I wanted to mention is, unfortunately, we're having some issues with the custom resources right now, and this is really helpful with custom resources, but due to some issues, it's really hard to test it for complex views. But once that's solved, I think this is going to really help, especially for custom resources. Yeah, that's all I got. If you had a chance to play with it, please let me know what you think. And if you find any issues or something that's not working the way it should, please let me know. So I got.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Milan, for taking on that issue. It's a tough one, and glad we're making progress on it. And we'll take a look and get that merged in as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy that one is behind. It was not an easy one to crack. So.
Cool. All right. Well, I will jump on to the last item on the agenda. This is something Vikram and I worked on a little bit. And this one is a demo for some plugin work that's been happening over the last week or so. This is specifically with the Helm plugin. The URL for this is under Blood Orange IO, Octant Helm, and they wrote this plugin more than a year and a half ago. And since that initial release, it hasn't really had a lot of updates. So we're revisiting this, and you can even see like the old UI. So that's a little nostalgic if you want to really jump way back to the earlier versions of Octant. And we're just adding a couple new features. Back when this plugin was written, Octant was mostly read-only. And so since then, we've had the concept of actions, and now we can actually do a lot of write operations, and we can start changing how we'd essentially interact with Helm. And so one of the things I'd like to demo is an upgrade from the initial Helm release to demo some of the new functionality. So the first piece that I want to show is actually just Helm install something. So currently right now, if you install something, you'd have to do it from the command line. And so I've added a little note about this saying, well, what work needs to happen before Helm install is possible, right? So this is essentially a search feature, and it's also, in a way, a UI feature at the same time, right? We have to figure out, like, do we want to make a search bar component? How would that look? And just to think about, like, Helm specifically, right? If you do a Helm search, you could be searching multiple repositories. So there's a lot of nuances that could go into a search, and then people are going to start saying, like, well, I want to do search and search filtering. So it can get complicated really quickly. So I just left install alone for now. I think this is something that could warrant discussion in the future. And so the first thing to show is now we have an uninstall type of operation, fairly simple, right? So now you can remove Helm releases, since that's fairly straightforward. We assume that the cleanup works, essentially. There could be edge cases where you have resources left behind by Helm, and sometimes it might warn you about that. So this still assumes the happy case for the most part. So moving on, we have now an updated chart. We have the history. So every time you make an upgrade, it'll show a history. So we could even try something like Helm upgrade. Oh, sweet. I already actually have an old version of this. So if we set, say, a new key value to Helm, let's see what we get. Helm upgrade failed executing. What does it not want? You must provide current. Okay, so Helm upgrade, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so maybe it wants something different, or maybe there's something weird about this key value. But if you upgrade a key value, hypothetically should upgrade, and you'd see the history up here. You get notes, and then lastly, it's values. There's something I'm still thinking about. And this is kind of just more of an implementation detail versus what is actually shown. So here you have the concept of values. What values in Helm typically for users really just mean this section of Helm here, where you have the access keys, custom annotations, deployment, and essentially values that you can override, compose, and all that configuration management stuff. But internally, the values method, or at least the values object, refers to a whole bunch of other stuff like capabilities. It even holds the chart information release. And so it holds a lot of other metadata pertaining to the Helm release. So I'm trying to figure out how to get this merged up so that it's only accessing the values and merging in. And then we can get an upgrade command, and we can essentially do the Helm upgrade through a UI. So those are what's available at the moment. We also have an outstanding issue for adding a resource viewer to the GraphViz section. So we could have a tab, and we could show a resource viewer of Helm related objects. It seems straightforward, but it's actually not. I thought about this a little bit, and you kind of have to, because of the way that Octant creates the resource viewer right now using the querier. It looks for relationships that are typically like parent-child relationships between objects. And for Helm, that may or may not be the case. So we would need a different mechanism for drawing lines between objects in a resource viewer. And that points back to an issue Brian wrote almost, last November? Yeah, that's a long time ago. And he proposed that we needed to have a mechanism to draw lines between two objects that would be available to users. And it might look something like an annotation or some other mechanism. But I think we're going to need something like this implemented if we want to draw a resource viewer specifically for Helm.
Sam, I think you should look how the Knative plugin is, including the resource view. I think it's doing it at a slightly different level. So basically just adding, if I remember right, just adding nodes and edges. So that might be the easiest way to do this.
Sure, absolutely. And this might, I don't know, on Go plugins, I've never tried. I don't know if we can do it like that in Go. Might be a bit more restrictive.
Yeah, I think
Right.
I think we can, but not with because we can pack into the content response a resource viewer, and the fields of that resource viewer are public, and we can populate that component with the edges manually, but it would be very tedious and would basically require you generating a bunch of generating everything manually and then assigning it. Whereas on the JavaScript side, we can just give it that JSON blob and it does the right thing. So,
right.
Yeah, I do think having some formal API for establishing relationships between objects is a good idea. Also, I think that Sam, you might want to talk to Luis about the form component. I think that is a good case for, like you were talking about, a search feature or some type of input, just generic random input to capture doing an install. And once we have the ability to create a form component and render it wherever we want into our layouts, that kind of enables some of that behavior.
Yeah, right on. That is something that, yeah, we definitely we'll have form refactors, and it's going to be tied to a lot of the existing work. So, yeah. But I think ultimately, what we're looking at here right now is probably not going to be the next release of the plugin. I think I'd like to see a little bit more maturity before we kind of release for this one. But as always, community contributions would be helpful, or you have suggestions, comments, open issues, and all that good stuff. Let's see, back to the notes. Oh, and file system operations, right. So Helm also can install from things locally. And so if you want to do a Helm install from file, that also kind of needs to be a thing. But also, like, this is something I want as well for the Kind plugin, where if you wanted to do an import and export of YAML files from Octant, I think this is something we need to think about, which previously wasn't possible on the browser version of Octant, but now we're in Electron, we have a way of interacting with the file system on the front end and on the back end as well. So depending on how we design this, we are going to slowly get file upload type of scenarios as well. Cool. Well, that is it for Helm plugin. We can move on to open Q&A if no one else has any comments.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Looking forward to seeing it as it matures a little more. I like yeah, I mean, just bringing it up to date with the latest Octant is nice in itself. That, to me, that might be worth a PR upstream. Just the fact that we brought it up to date. Yeah, it's not like you were saying. It's not like, oh, we got a bunch of new things, but also like, hey, you can run this with the latest version of Octant, and you can do uninstalls and see your list of Helm things. That's valuable.
Yeah, and that code is already pushed up. It's not, if people want it, cool. They'll have to build it themselves. I'll probably have to ping Josh to see what's the state of that, because he added me as a maintainer on this repo, so I do have full control over it. But just to see how much involvement he wants to have over time.
Sure. Yep. Sounds great.
Cool. Well, that brings us to open Q&A. Do we have any last minute questions, comments, concerns?
One thing that I just want to get people thinking about is it's something that we've had, I think it comes up every now and then, where we talked about getting better CI/CD in place. This is going to become really critical as we move into auto updates. And I think our first pass of auto updating is going to be fairly naive and just kind of be like hey, we've swapped the binary and that's it. But I would like to eventually get us to a place where, you're running Octant. There's a process watching in the background for new releases. That you get a global alert saying that there's a new release, and you can dismiss it or you can click right there to update. And then also in preferences, there'd be an update section, which would then let you see like what version you're on, what version you can update to. But before we get to that point of like allowing users just to kind of like hit that button and get those updates right away, I would really like for us as a team to think about and plan what does testing look like in that world where when we push up a release tag and it gets built and then we publish it, people are now running the latest, right? And we're not having to like what I want to avoid is in that scenario, it's great because you can now get updates out to people very quickly. But what I also want to avoid is like we push, like we're doing O.25 and then 25.1, 25.2, 25.3. like just because we can doesn't mean we should. And so having really good like integration tests in place is something that I'd like to see. And this is more of just like a call out to the team and anyone in the community who has done this thing before, who has experience with like doing integration tests for applications, things that run on the desktop, just trying to capture ideas and put that in people's brain. Probably, I would say this effort of like making a big push on it is a couple releases out, but is something that I want us to start thinking about and start to like building the foundation when we see opportunities to do so.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we need to spend some time thinking about this, make sure we get it right. Feels like we should probably open a discussion about this and then, try to put all the comments and thoughts in there, so kind of keep track of it. There might be already discussion, I don't know.
I don't think there is, but if there isn't, I'll open one and kick it off. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't quite see it on this product excellence board. It might be a good place for it. We also do need a discussion. I think this is something that needs more planning. There was a proposal for testing that I've written like months ago and never executed on it. Sorry, y'all. I'll find time to draft up a proof of concept at some point one of these weeks and kick the tires on it.
Yeah, I think that proposal is actually still. I reread it recently, and some of the outstanding things under the implementation strategy in that proposal, I think, are a little easier to do even now. Like that was, I think that was written back in like I don't know, it was a while ago. Like
it's a year ago.
Was it a year ago? Yeah, I was going to say I knew it was a while ago, but so I think that like getting kind set up in via GitHub Actions, what it is now versus what it was a year ago is like a completely different experience, and like it's a pretty common thing to be able to do now. I also think that when we wrote that end-to-end testing, there was still a lot of, I think there was some concerns in thinking about both the CLI version of Octant that we were shipping and the Electron version, and I think now we can put fresh eyes on that with the purely the Electron version as our target. So Yeah, I think there's still a lot of really good things that were captured in that proposal that still apply and will still be very useful. We can probably just give it a little bit of a read through and then use that to drive any like updates or thoughts around how we might want to proceed.
Cool. Any questions or comments on getting better CI/CD on Octant and auto updates, testing in general? All right. Nope. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I think we can call it a day. And thank you, everyone, for coming to this community meeting. And we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.